Hello and welcome back to Afterglow. This is going to be the 5th bonus episode I've done. I wanted to get something out before I started on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Secret of the Reviews, which we'll be doing the entire month of June. Wanted to do something a little different though, a little bit of a palate cleanser. I don't even know how long this episode's going to be, depends on how long I rant. But I've been around a little bit. I'm not a young guy anymore, but because of that, I've been in the gaming community for quite a long time. So whenever YouTube popped up, I was a huge fan of any gaming content I could find. And there's not many of those old hats that are really active today. The Angry Video Game Nerd, of course, is still going. Irate Gamer is still going. The Happy Video Game Nerd turned into Stop Skeletons from Fighting, and he's still going. But really, outside of those three, a lot of my favorites aren't really active anymore. But just because they're not active doesn't mean that they don't have a lot of content that they put out that's still really entertaining to watch to this day. And if you haven't heard of these guys, I mean, they're not making content anymore, so they're not really going to show up in the algorithm. So if you've never watched any of them, you're not going to hear about them unless you hear about them from someone who remembers them, like myself. So I've done for this episode, I've picked out 7 of my favorite old school YouTube people. And I'm going to compile a list in no particular order of just introducing you to these guys, and hopefully you can go enjoy some awesome content that isn't quite new, but is still awesome to watch. So this episode is going to be retro YouTube of all things. So we're going to start off with
games that suck!
So in those early YouTube days, a lot of people took that original Angry Video Game Nerd formula and they wanted to make it theirs because, of course, he was getting tons of views and it was really, really popular. A lot of them felt kind of disingenuous about it, though. Armake, on the other hand, this dude looked more legit than AVGN, in my opinion. His anger looked so real, and it sounded so real whenever it came across. And Armake was an awesome guy behind the camera as well as in front of it. He put out some very, very intense game reviews. They were really good, but they were also really, really intense. They didn't have the look of the AVGN. It didn't have that kind of like slick produced look, but dear God, the heart that he put in his episodes were absolutely awesome. Thankfully, later on, I actually got the chance to talk to the guy a little bit. I entered a contest for a video review, and I actually won it. So that was really, really cool. And I got to talk to him a bit in Steam and whatnot. He gave me some good advice that's helped to this day. I don't really do a lot of video stuff anymore. I pretty well only do podcasting, except for the very, very rare video. But Armake definitely gave me some good pointers to get me to where I'm at right now. Sadly enough, early last year, I believe, Armake did end up passing away. I was really, really bummed to hear about it. But if I understand everything correctly, dude was happy. So, you know, that's the main thing. And I really, really hope that you can go back and maybe watch some of his stuff and remember him, because he was a huge part of early YouTube, and I don't hear him talked about much anymore today, but like I really feel like he built the foundation of game reviewing, along with the AVGN, but his style felt a lot more heartfelt to me. So go back, watch some Armake. Dude was incredibly entertaining. But we're going to go ahead and move on to our second person we'll be featuring, who will be...
In the criminal justice system, the act of creating terrible games is especially heinous. On YouTube, these offenders are pursued by an elite squad known as the Suck-Ass Games Unit. These are their stories.
Play It Bogart. Now, he was another one of those early internet review guys that was around who, again, didn't do the fancy camera work or anything, but his reviews were really entertaining, in my opinion. I had a great time watching his stuff, and it wasn't all angry from him. He did a Metal Gear retrospective that I thought was really, really well done. That can still be found on YouTube. I think most of his videos are kind of spread out a little bit in YouTube these days. If you check out the Internet Reviewer Archive, they've got quite a few of them up over there. But again, he also did the angry video game review thing, but his was also really entertaining. It wasn't just a kid yelling at a camera. Dude was legit funny. Like, I remember his review of Rambo for the NES, and he kept drawing the parallels to the Legend of Zelda 2, and it was just a really, really good video. Now, I did cheat a little bit with this guy because he's still making content as of today. He did a review, I want to say 2, maybe 3 years back, of a Wall Street Kid that was really well done. But that's not his normal style anymore. He is still streaming quite a bit on Twitch. However, he's definitely changed quite a bit. He, I believe now, is a cross-dressing game streamer. I'm not trying to be funny or make a joke or anything like that. That's actually what he does. And honestly, as long as he's happy doing it, that's all that matters. It's definitely drifted away from my normal stuff that I would watch, but as long as he's happy and he's got an audience that he's enjoying making content for, more power to him. But on that note, I'm going to move on to our third pick now, who is...
Awesome video games. Video games are awesome. Awesome video games. Video games are awesome. Awesome video games. Video games are awesome.
Awesome video games. So this is going to be something a little different. We're finally moving away from the angry reviewer format and it's something more along the lines of a sketch comedy deal. And this was very, very hilarious if you've got the right mindset for it. The best way I can think of it is take Beavis and Butthead and replace the music stuff with video game stuff and maybe make them a little less obscene, and you get awesome video games. It was a great show. They portray themselves as idiots, more or less. It's the best way I could put it. But dear God, it is hilarious to see them, like in the first episode, just struggle to get past the first Goomba in Super Mario Brothers until they figure out how the jump button works. I think even earlier they struggle to figure out how the D-pad works for movement. It's hilarious. And the series went on for quite a while. They did eventually wrap it up. The people behind it have a channel called Far From Subtle. They did some streaming stuff, but the last videos that they put out were a year ago. That being said, Awesome Video Games hasn't had anything put out for many, many years. It's been over a decade, so I don't believe it's coming back. But that being said, it was a very, very entertaining show, and like I said, it did complete its run, but it's definitely worth going back and watching. Speaking of going back and watching something else, we're going to get ready to check out our next feature. NES Tips. This guy did a really cool video series where he would pick an NES game and he would go through it giving you tips and tricks on how to beat it. Never spoiling the ending of the game, but he would go through the game and give you all kinds of little tips and tricks to beat that game. A modern day equivalent of this guy would be You Can Beat Video Games on YouTube, but Roth more or less stuck to the NES, and his videos were always like really compact and concise to give you just what you need to be to go through and beat the game. Really, really fantastic game series. And a few things about Roth. He was actually one of the guys behind my first, what I would call home on the internet. PlayTheNES.com. I loved that site, and they had an awesome forum over there. Sadly, they had to shut down many, many years ago. But before they shut down, I actually made a video on YouTube that went over the site right before it shut down, showing off all the stuff that was there and the way it looked and everything. As far as the man himself, he is still around. I am actually friends with him on Facebook. And if you go to SlyDogStudios.com, he also works on making NES homebrew. And he's got some really fun games. Click is a blast. The Black Box Challenge is really good. NES Virus Cleaner is one I was addicted to for a really long time. So it's really cool to see him get into game development, and he's been doing it for a very long time. Tons of free ROMs you can go over to his website to check out and play. Definitely worth taking the time, not only to go and play his ROMs, but also go look up the NES Tips videos on YouTube, because they're always really, really entertaining to watch, and you might learn something about some of those NES games that you didn't know. I know I did. So for our next feature... Rue from Clan of the Grey Wolf. Rue is one of those guys, in my opinion at least, he did the early video game essays where he would go deep into the game, pull out all kinds of facts about all kinds of obscure stuff, and he did have a little bit of humor, not quite as funny as your normal guys, but his stuff was really, really good and got into the nitty-gritty. He was a big RPG fan as well. I loved his Dragon Quest retrospective. And he was a big Star Trek fan as well. Obviously, I'm a big Star Trek fan. Y'all listened to Spocktober for Afterglow, didn't you? But, man, his deep down dives into these games were awesome to listen to. I have no clue where he went, though. He was doing a bit of a podcast for a little bit, and afterwards he just kind of disappeared. But it's worth going back and watching the content they has up. I believe there's like 26, maybe 27 episodes of Clan of the Grey Wolf. 16-Bit Gems is the actual name of the series, with Clan of the Grey Wolf being the group that he was with. He was actually Rue. I think Clan of the Grey Wolf might have been like 2 or 3 other people. They were there whenever RetroWare TV was still active making content, instead of being a store for Screenwave Media now, which I really, really hate, because RetroWare.tv was kind of like the little brother to Screw Attack back in the day. They had all kinds of good content. Pat the NES Punk was over there for a little bit too. Of course, I would consider him a bigger guy on YouTube, and he's still there, so can't really put him in the retro YouTube video, although he was back there in the early days too, but he's still making content, and I rate him pretty high as far as his content. Don't always agree with his views on this podcast, but this isn't about Pat. I'm going on a rant. This is about Rue. Go watch 16-Bit Gems. It's really great stuff. So now you're kind of going to get a 2-for-1 for my last 2 picks, but we're going to start with... Little Miss Gamer. Little Miss Gamer was affiliated with a site called PBC Productions, and her stuff, again, was also really, really heartfelt in my opinion. She reviewed all kinds of games. There's like a pretty big variety that she hit. Not many episodes that she put up, but they're all really, really good. She did some small skits. She also did quite a bit of stuff with puppets, which I thought was really cool. As a matter of fact, I think whenever she left YouTube, she actually got a job doing work with puppets. So I'm really glad that she found something that she wanted to do and ended up in a happy place. Another thing about her episodes, she always had viewer mail, which I thought was a really cool thing to add into an episode. It kind of gave it that, honestly, old school video game magazine feel. You know how a lot of your old magazines like EGM and Nintendo Power would have like the player's corner where you could write in and the editors would respond? It gave everything that kind of feel. I loved that early interaction that she tried to foster between her and her viewers, and I thought it was really, really cool. Again, she didn't put a lot of episodes out, but what was there was fantastic. And unlike a lot of the earlier ones on this list, very, very well produced too. Did forget to mention about Rue. His stuff was well produced too, along though with Little Miss Gamer's stuff. Very, very high production values, in my opinion. Easily watchable today. Go back and check her stuff out if you haven't yet. But I also have to bring up, if we're talking about PBC Productions, of course there's one other thing I have to bring up. And if you don't know it yet, get ready to hear one of the cheesiest, yet most addicting theme songs you have ever heard.
Stand a chance, they see it and they wet their pants. He'll kick their butt from here to France, oh yeah. He's Captain. He's
Captain S. So let me explain this concept to you, because it is absolutely amazing. If you were growing up in the mid-late 80s, there was a cartoon called Captain N, the Game Master. So if Captain N had a counterpart, that would be Captain S. But on top of that, it's live action instead of animated, but there's even more to it. The show is like Full House, but with gaming. It's absolutely amazing in the way that they pulled it off. They tried to aim for that really high-end moral value thing that Full House went for, while at the same time adding in Nintendo. The show had a 10-episode run, and it more or less... These 10 episodes composed a long story to the point to where it's an almost 2-hour-long movie if you watch it front to back. And it's a fantastic story. It will have you laughing, but it'll also kind of gets hooks in you to where you're really eager to watch the thing close out. Now, there was an 11th episode. It was a bonus episode. It was actually a crossover with the Angry Video Game Nerd, something that he starred in that you don't really hear about anymore, which is crazy to me because the show was so good. Now, back then, they were affiliated with Screw Attack as well. They were wanting to do a Season 2 of this, but it ended up not panning out. I think part of it was due to the financial part of it, because it was not a cheap show to make, even though it was, you know, definitely amateur. But, dear God, the production was so good for it being amateur. And I think that time was a big problem, too, trying to get everyone involved in the show. And I know that one of the people on the show was having some medical issues at the time. I do think that he ended up getting better. I at least really hope so. But dear God, this show was amazing to watch. You gotta go back and watch it. Again, it's like Captain N crossed over with Full House, plus it's live action. But it also tells a one big story over the 10 episodes. It's great. Like, you gotta go check it out. Fantastic show. But that's gonna close out this episode. 7 YouTubers, or people, I wouldn't even call them YouTubers, people that upload to YouTube maybe, that you should really go back and check out that aren't making content now. Check these guys out. Check out the genesis of online gaming videos, because it's definitely worth your time to listen to. And again, thanks for taking your time to listen to my podcast at the same time. I do really appreciate it. If you want to check out more, check the show notes. There's a Discord, there's a Patreon where you can get a shout out if you want to donate, or you can just go to the Patreon to check out the news. I usually try to post something there at least once a month. You can check out friends of the show like Retro Gaming Roundup, who just had a new episode which has a really wild top 10. It was kind of bittersweet because they talk about a former host that they had, and that former host was Mike Kennedy, the guy behind the Coleco Chameleon, which that's a rabbit hole for you to go down if you don't know anything about the Coleco Chameleon yet. Also, be sure to check out Secret Levels. As a matter of fact, they're getting ready to celebrate a 5-year, I believe, anniversary. I'm actually going to go to Discord right now to look, so bear with me. 6-year, actually. I am sorry, 6-year anniversary. So they're getting ready to do a Secret Levels Hall of Fame. Be sure to check that out. While you're checking out shows, also be sure to check out Grim with the Lost and Gone podcast. He's got more stuff coming out fairly soon. Great show to listen to. Highly recommend you go check it out. As far as our show, our logo and artwork has been done from TobyVonDoom from Secret Levels. Our intro and outro music is done by Grim from the Lost and Gone podcast. I can't say it enough. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this bonus episode of Afterglow. And get ready for a huge June. It's going to be Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Secret of the Reviews. And I will see you then.